Although the Diamondbacks only snuck into the NL playoffs at the very end as the last wildcard team in the number 6 spot, they ended up going and beating the Milwaukee Brewers in the wildcard round, and then the Los Angeles Dodgers in the NLDS, and the Phillies in the NL Championship Series to go ahead and punch their ticket to the World Series. Now, after Game 4 just concluded, the Diamondbacks are well on their way to going ahead and fighting against the Rangers to win the World Series crown. A big part of their success has been their bullpen, and a major addition they made at the trade deadline was Paul Sewald, their closer who they got from the Seattle Mariners. At the time of this deal, people were really confused why the Mariners would trade away their closer. They're right in the heat of the playoff race, and if you remember how contentious that AL West was about a month ago when the season came to an end, they could have used Sewald's services to go ahead and close out games. He was also a huge clubhouse presence, the teammates loved him, and he left Seattle, so it was a big shock to see him leave. From the Diamondbacks' perspective, you can never have enough relief pitching in October, and that's really what they've leaned on, having their starters go 5-6 innings and giving the ball to their bullpen to close out games, and that's what's gotten them so far to the World Series. With Game 5 coming up tonight, if the Diamondbacks want any chance of coming back and winning this World Series, they need to rely on their bullpen heavily and have them be successful. We all saw Sewald give up that 2-run shot to Seager in Game 1, so he needs to be a little bit more reliable, but all in all, Sewald's been a very good piece for the Arizona Diamondbacks both in the regular season and the postseason, and without him, they wouldn't be where they are right now. So we're going to go ahead and take a little bit of a look back at what could be the last day of the postseason and see just how impactful this Paul Sewald trade was for the Diamondbacks and see what the Mariners ended up getting back in return for his services. As always, if you like what I do, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can do that by hitting that baseball in that bottom right corner. It really helps out a lot. It helps a channel like mine grow. I really want to get to 1,000 subscribers sometime in the near future, and that would be a huge help for you guys to help get me there. And you'll get more baseball content like this, not only from me, but from other awesome baseball creators out there. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive a little bit deeper into the Paul Sewald trade that got the Diamondbacks their closer for the foreseeable future. In order to fully grasp this trade in its full entirety, we have to look at what Sewald did in a Seattle Mariners uniform. Again, this trade just happened this deadline, so it is a little soon to evaluate just how things have gone, but what the Mariners have gotten back have already made some impact at the major league level, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And I didn't make a video on this when the trade deadline happened, so I figured now's a great time to do it as the Diamondbacks push towards the playoffs. Sewald started 2023 red hot, and I'm kind of shocked he didn't end up getting named to an all-star team, especially considering that the game was in Seattle. In a Mariners uniform, he pitched to a 3-1 record, which doesn't matter too much for relievers or in pitchers in general, but I figured it's important to note. The 2.39 ERA and a whip below 1.025, which is really good. The fact he's also racked up 21 saves across 45 appearances is really good as well. He also struck out a decent number of batters, 12.5 per 9 innings while in a Mariners uniform in 2023, which is really good, especially for a reliever who generally you see relievers needing to strike out a lot of guys. So the fact he's able to do that really bode well, and he had a really solid year as a Seattle Mariner. Then, of course, he ended up getting the call that every player dreads, getting traded mid-season, uprooting your life, and being sent out to the Arizona Diamondbacks. Well, granted, they did make the playoffs and are now in the World Series while the Mariners didn't make it. It's obviously a lot of stress and trouble for a pitcher to go ahead and have to deal with that kind of transition mid-season. Although his numbers did drop off a little bit, and the metrics did show that a little bit as well when he went from Seattle to Arizona. For instance, his fielding independent pitching jumped from 2.35 in Seattle to over 5 in Arizona. He was still a solid reliever and provided the Diamondbacks with a lot of stretch work and a lot of key saves and a lot of key opportunities. As you can see, a lot of those numbers rose when he came to Arizona. His ERA shot up by almost half a point, his whip by almost 4 points, and his strikeouts dropped a little bit too. He started walking a lot of guys as well, but those numbers were really inflated by a rough start. He really found his groove come September and August and has really carried that momentum into October. This is probably clearest to see in his postseason numbers, which show just how dominant he was. The only earned runs he's allowed this postseason have been from that Corey Seager home run, and he's converted 6 of 7 save appearances and struck out 14 batters across the way. He has been dominant in the postseason, even if Game 1 didn't necessarily show it. He's going to need to be a key piece for the Diamondbacks going forward if they want to rebound and win this series, and for the Diamondbacks, they definitely need his services to be at the top of their game to win. Now that we've talked a little bit about Paul Sewald, let's shift our focus a little bit to what the Mariners got back and see just how well they made out. You might be surprised, there might have been a hidden gem in there that we'll talk about a little bit later in the video, but there's some solid pieces. As you can see here, a home run hidden infielder, and a couple other really foundational pieces that the Mariners can use going forward. And that leads us to Josh Rojas. Rojas entered this year his fifth MLB season, all with the Diamondbacks, and really struggled, going with a 228 batting average, an OBP below 300, a slugging below 300, and OPS plus of 62. He really could not put the pieces together well. And though he did have a pitching performance, as you see here, it's always fun when a position player does that for them. He just did not put together the year that he wanted to have in Arizona. Things started to change when he got traded from Arizona to Seattle, though. They worked with him on his swing, and they unlocked a little bit of power and a little bit more contact, which helped boost his batting average by almost 50 points. His on-base rose by almost 30 points, and his slugging rose by over 100 points. And now he was a league average hitter across a smaller sample size of only 46 games. But they were really, really excited to see what he could do. He played a little bit of second base, he played a little third, and although he did play a little bit of outfield in Arizona, the Mariners decided to keep him in the infield for right now, but he fills that infield utility role very well, and is someone that the Mariners will likely build around in the future in that role. To have a utility guy who can be a league average hitter off the bench is pretty valuable, especially for a playoff team, to have a guy that matchup-wise can come in and pinch hit, or if an injury happens, someone you can rely on to go ahead and make a difference. Obviously, for a star closer like Paul Sewald, that for most people who are baseball fans know who he is, Josh Rojas isn't a big name and isn't necessarily the guy you want in this deal, which is why there are other players involved who are most likely higher rated. But for right now, this is a solid player who the Mariners have crafted and built off of what he did in Arizona and improved on his skill set, which is something that any team should do when they go ahead and try and acquire a player. And for Josh Rojas, being in Seattle has improved his stock, and he's going to be a solid player most likely. Now we can get to my favorite part of these videos, which is talking about some of the prospects that the Arizona Diamondbacks gave up for the Seattle Mariners. Rojas was an established major leaguer, solid player, but a lot of times you don't see those kind of swaps. There's almost always prospects involved, and that's where Dominic Canzone really came in as the best prospect at the time of this deal by a lot of evaluators that the Mariners got back. He's a corner outfielder by trade. He was the 8th round pick of the Diamondbacks in 2019 out of Ohio State, and people really expect him to stick in the corner outfield. There was some talk maybe he ends up first base just due to some defensive limitations. And so, of course, the first thing I had to show you was that great catch he made against Tampa Bay. And that's simply because I want to show you that he does have some defensive prowess. He's not an above average defender by any means, but he isn't limited enough that he needs to move to first base. Granted, maybe later on in his career, he ends up having to move that way. But for right now, he's able to hold his own in the corner outfield, which is good because he hasn't been the most successful hitter in his early stint in the major leagues. Right now, he doesn't profile to be a great hitter, he doesn't profile to be a great fielder, but he's going to be a solid guy. As the prospect coming out of college, people really touted the fact he had an advanced hit tool, especially for a college guy. He was going to rise through the ranks very quickly, and unfortunately that didn't really happen. You can attribute that to a lot of things, maybe the fact that his first full minor league season would have been 2020, delayed by the pandemic, or a whole array of other issues that could have potentially delayed his development. But what we do know is for an 8th round pick to go ahead and make it where he did, to become Baseball America's 13th ranked prospect in the Diamondback system is something to definitely be proud of. Of course, right now, he hasn't done great things in the major leagues. I'll put the numbers on the screen for you right now. I combined his time in Arizona and Seattle simply because both A, there's a small sample size, and B, the numbers are roughly the same. A little bit better in Arizona, but again, an even smaller sample size of 15 games in the Chase Field, so really not much to take from that. He hasn't looked great. Again, a 220 batting average is nothing to write home about. OPS plus of 81 is a below average hitter, especially for a corner outfield spot like left field, where your defensive ability isn't necessarily something you're super known for. So he's going to need to pick it up. But what really jumps out to me and why there's a lot of potential for him is his strikeout rate. It's at 17.6%, which is really good for a rookie. He's 25, so he's a little bit older for a rookie, but the jump from AAA to the major leagues is huge. It takes a lot of adjustments to go ahead and hit major league pitching and have a good batter's eye for stuff that is just electric. So the fact he's been able to do that and keep his strikeout rate low bodes well for his future and is something I'm really excited about if I'm a Mariners fan or someone who just loves good baseball. Canzone is probably not going to be a guy who's going to make an all-star team. Maybe a surprise. There's always a couple surprises every year, but he's not going to be a breakout guy. Right now, he has negative 0.1 WAR on Baseball Reference. So league average, just about replacement level, but for a rookie, nothing to knock your head at. He's going to be a solid player going forward. I can definitely see him improving as the Mariners go and kind of do what they did with Josh Rojas and maybe unlock a couple things in his swing that just moving from Arizona to Seattle threw him off his game a little bit. I would not be shocked to see him recover as he just broke his rookie status a couple games before the postseason this year. There's going to be a lot of excitement going forward for him in Seattle, and it's rightfully so. He's going to be a good prospect, not a great prospect. he has the ability to be a solid player, and we'll see where that goes. The last player the Mariners got is someone that fans should be really excited for after a breakout 2023 season in Ryan Bliss. Started off ranked 29th in the Diamondbacks system according to MLB Pipeline and ended up 14th on the Mariners system and even higher on Baseball America. He was drafted in the second round in 2021 out of Auburn, and he immediately hit the ground running in his collegiate days, starting as a freshman in the SEC, not an easy feat to do, and ended up being a second-round pick in the 2021 MLB draft in the second round, 42nd overall by the Diamondbacks. He's a short guy, 5'6", 165, second baseman. That's probably where he's going to stay, but he has a lot of hit tool potential and is a solid runner as well as really good defense for a second baseman, which will propel him to be a solid player at the major league level. He's continuing his breakout season in the Arizona Fall League right now, playing for the Peoria Javelinas with a .438 on-base percentage through 14 games. He's really put things together so far this season, and it's really showing up in his numbers. He's a very exciting prospect. He's not going to be a superstar, but he's the guy who's going to contribute majorly in, think of like a Colton Wong way if you are familiar with his game. Obviously, Colton Wong isn't necessarily a star player right now, but he had a stretch time where he was really, really good, and that could be Ryan Bliss for a long, long period of time. He's a solid player who will have a solid peak. Due to the volatile nature of relievers, having a solid position player can be more beneficial than having a good relief arm, and Ryan Bliss has the potential to be a very good player for a long time and corner second base for the Mariners for the next 7 years. As I mentioned, he's a second baseman. He's only 5'6", 165, so he doesn't have a ton of pop as you would expect, but he has enough. He's not a slouch when it comes to home run numbers, and although he's not going to hit for 20 home runs in a year, for instance, this year, he ended up hitting 23 across 3 minor league levels. That's pretty impressive for a guy who's shorter than I am, and I'm pretty short. So the fact that he's been able to put those kind of numbers up is definitely impressive and both to show that he's really putting things together. His batting average this year is above 300, and his OPS is above 900 across 3 levels. Again, that was AA with the Diamondbacks, and then AAA with the Diamondbacks, and AAA with the Mariners. Now, it is important to note that the Pacific Coast League, which is where both the Diamondbacks and Mariners play their AAA games, is a very hitter-friendly league. Almost every park is very hitter-friendly. So those numbers are a little bit inflated. It's just the nature of how it is. But he's a very, very good player. And although his numbers did drop a little bit when he reached AAA after being really, really dominant across about 70 games in AA for the Diamondbacks this year, there's a lot of potential for him to go ahead and improve on those numbers. He's only 23. He'll be 24 next season. And the Mariners don't need him right now. There's still a lot of time for him to go and develop. And if he gets a midseason call-up or an end-of-year call-up or even to start 2025, he will be a very good piece for the Mariners going forward and someone they can rely on heavily to go ahead and bolster their team. With the Rangers up 3-1 after dominating the last 2 games at Chase Field, the Diamondbacks need a miracle for them to go ahead and win the 2023 World Series. That being said, having pieces like Paul Sewald will definitely help their case and go ahead and potentially come back from this 3-1 deficit and win the Fall Classic. With that being said, the Mariners didn't get necessarily a bad haul from trading away a star closer. Yeah, they probably should have kept him, especially because they were on the brink of making the postseason, and given how close the AL West was, maybe they could be in the Rangers spot right now, 1 win away from a World Series. Given that they've never made the World Series, that was probably a little bit more of a paramount concern. With that being said, Mariners fans shouldn't be too distraught. They have a couple good pieces that could potentially benefit their team in a very positive way going forward, and Sewald's about to hit free agency, so you never know. He left Seattle. Maybe he comes back. With that being said, thank you so much for watching this video, and hopefully the team you were rooting for in this World Series ended up winning. If not, sorry, there's always next year. And if you do like these videos, again, please go ahead and hit that baseball that's going to show up on your screen if it's not there already. Subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps. And you also have 2 videos up here to watch if you're interested in any of those other content. And I really appreciate you guys sticking around this long, and I hope to see you guys in the next video.